What's going on, y'all? Today I'm back to give you guys my full review and my final thoughts on the Cloudsurfer Max. So let's see if this shoe is worth $180. So as always, we are going to start out with the outsole and the traction performance on the Cloudsurfer Maxes, like I do with every running shoe. And as you can see, it kind of looks like a pretty traditional on running outsole pattern. They kind of always do those hole cutouts on the bottom of the shoe, as well as they sometimes hollow out the middle. I don't know. I feel like all their outsoles look like this. I could be totally wrong because I don't run in a whole lot of on running shoes. But overall, this traction pattern in the conditions that I ran in and where I typically run, which is on the road in pretty dry weather conditions, this traction did pretty good. Now, it hasn't really been raining where I live, which is in the Bay Area in California, so I'm unfortunately not able to tell you how this traction would hold up in worse weather conditions, whether that's snow, heavy rain, I don't know what other conditions. I also haven't ran on the trail in these shoes, but I don't think that this outsole would do too well in some of the worst conditions, or if there's too much uneven terrain or there's a lot of loose gravel and whatnot. I just feel like this outsole is definitely not really built for that. I think it's best for road running as they designed it for. I do want to note that I did casually play a little bit of basketball in the shoe and the traction was not good. Definitely a little bit worse than some of my other running shoes that I have played a little bit of basketball in. Not on purpose, obviously, but sometimes you just gotta hoop in the shoes that you're wearing at the moment. But yeah, the outsole I would say is probably average to slightly below average. If you're running on the roads in pretty good weather conditions, you should be good to go. But if you are running in different weather conditions, or you want to take these on the trail a little bit as well, I think there are better options on the market when it comes to the outsole of a shoe. Now, moving on to the cushion setup of the Cloudsurfer Max. This is kind of the part of the shoe that kind of confused me a little bit, but we'll get straight into the specs. This is a full-length Helion midsole. Does not have a plate in this shoe, and the stack height is 37 millimeters in the heel, dropping to 31 millimeters in the forefoot, giving it a 6 millimeter heel to toe drop. Now, why I say it kind of confuses me is that when the name of a running shoe kind of has the name Max in the shoe, you're thinking plush, high impact protection, easy on your joints, high stack height as well. And you're not really getting any of that with the Cloudsurfer Maxes. Now, I have no problem, I guess, with this midsole setup whatsoever. I think that is actually okay. Whether or not it's worth $180, I will definitely talk about that. But I feel like the feel underfoot is definitely okay for, I would say, a regular daily trainer. But to kind of call this like Cloudsurfer Max is kind of interesting to me. I feel like if this was just like the Cloudsurfer 3, I would kind of be like, oh, okay, sounds good. But the reason I say this is because you do get a lot of good compression due to the holes or cloud technology that On puts in this shoe. But I will say that the Helion Super Foam, I don't even know if it's a super foam to be honest, but it just feels like kind of a hard EVA or like a pretty firm EVA, which is, it kind of works because it provides a more stable ride. Since the medial and lateral sides of the midsole have these compression holes, you do basically compress the holes all the way down as you're running. And if it weren't as firm, it would probably be really unstable, as well as the holes would collapse really easily if the foam was any softer. Now, when it comes to responsiveness, I don't really feel like the foam was all that responsive. So it wasn't soft. It also wasn't super responsive, but I feel like it was pretty stable and it did provide okay impact protection. Now, where I have kind of problems with this setup is the price point. For $180, especially with the marketing of Max in the shoe, I feel like a lot of consumers are gonna look at the shoe. If they're not able to try the shoe on in store and kind of feel what the setup feels like, they might think that they're getting a really plush ride. They might think that they're getting a very comfortable shoe, high impact protection, but you're not really getting that with this midsole. Now, if they marketed it more towards as just like a regular daily trainer, it was maybe priced at $145, $150, which is nowadays the price of daily trainers, then I would say that the midsole or the setup is definitely good enough. I don't think it's my favorite. I definitely think that the Nike Pegasus 41s have a better midsole. The Nova Blast 5s have a better midsole. Yeah, those are just like Saucony Ride 18s. The Ride 19s are gonna come out, and I think that those are just maybe a better setup for the price, but that's also just my opinion. Now, If you're still interested in buying this shoe and you're maybe a huge On fan or you really want to try an On shoe, I would just say don't get your hopes too high. I think with the price point also at $180, you might think that you're going to get some uber premium experience with the midsole, but it's just not that. Like if you come into the shoe with like regular expectations or think, it's not going to be the most comfortable, but they're going to look cool, and I like to see like these little pods compress and whatnot, then I think you'll be decently happy, but your wallet might not. Now, let's talk about what types of runs I've done in the shoe. I've done faster runs, I've done slower runs, I've done kind of in the middle runs, and I would say that this shoe kind of doesn't really thrive in any of those paces, if I'm being 100% honest. I feel like when I ran slow, like it definitely had enough like stability and support and whatnot, but it kind of felt a little bit brick-like and a little bit heavy, like the setup, and then it wasn't super soft when I was running slow. When I did run a little bit faster, maybe I do prefer running a little bit faster in this shoe. I feel like since it was a firmer foam and the, I guess, compression and whatnot, I don't know, like it just felt a little bit better. I didn't feel like I was getting any help whatsoever, but I just felt like the setup was a little bit more smooth and just a little bit better as I picked up the pace a little bit. So if I were to lean towards, is this shoe better for faster runs or slower runs, I would say maybe on the faster side. I'm also 200 pounds, 6'1", so that's a little bit of context as to how the midsole maybe reacted for my weight and kind of like my stature, as well as maybe how fast I was running in the shoe. So I probably ran as fast as maybe 7 minutes per mile in the shoe, which isn't super fast, but with my weight and whatnot, I feel like I really tested the midsole in that, and it definitely felt a little bit better than when I ran really slow in the shoe. I just feel like the setup is just kind of confusing because if you have a max cushion shoe, you typically run a little bit slower, and it's supposed to be a little bit more comfortable as maybe for your recovery days and whatnot, but this is kind of like a max cushion, a little bit heavier shoe that does a little bit better when you run a little bit faster. So I don't know, it doesn't really make sense in my opinion, but that's just me. Now, moving on to the upper of the shoe, I would say that this is a decent upper. We're gonna talk about the upper and the fit. It is a combination of like a knitted tongue, it's also gusseted, as well as kind of like a regular mesh upper, and then you get these little ribbons that do their best to lock your foot down. The Achilles heel, or I guess like the heel tab of the shoe, is made out of knit material, and there's a couple Achilles pillows inside the shoe liner that kind of lock down your heel pretty well as long as you do the runner's loop. Now, when it comes to fit though, I have a wider than average foot and I got my true size. I do feel like the forefoot is very roomy. I felt like it ran true to size, but there was just a lot of volume in the forefoot, and at times if you didn't tie these shoes really tight, especially with the runner's loop, I feel like my forefoot was moving around a little bit too much. I think like with this whole setup with the upper as well as the midsole, I think that this is a great walking shoe. Like it's very comfortable if you go on long walks and you're not expecting to do too much in the shoe. But when you start to run and stuff, I just felt like the lockdown wasn't the best part of the shoe. I did tie my shoes really tight to get that good heel lockdown, as well as to keep my foot from moving around in the shoe, as well as, like the materials overall on the upper, I didn't hate. But again, for a premium price point of $180, I just feel like there's a lot better uppers and midsoles and just overall shoes out on the market, but I'll talk more about that in the conclusion. So overall, upper and fit, it still supported me decently well. Heel lockdown was good once I tied them really tight with the runner's loop. The materials weren't like the best, but they do feel maybe a step up over like regular daily trainers. Maybe like barely a step up just because of the knitted tongue and like the knitted heel tab. And then when it comes to lockdown and fit, I would say it's a little bit below average. I just think there's too much room in this forefoot. Maybe you could go down half a size if you have narrow or low volume feet. But if you have high volume feet, you might really like this shoe because there is a lot of space in the forefoot in my opinion or my experience. So overall, priced at $180, would I recommend the On Cloudsurfer Maxes? For me personally, it's a little bit tough. I don't think I would recommend this shoe just because I feel like the price is a little bit too high. The cushion setup is not the best, as well as it kind of doesn't really match the name, as well as I guess the purpose that I personally ran in this shoe with, or the kind of the use case that I was personally using the shoe for. And also like even for the use case that I was using the shoe for, it still didn't perform that well. And also like I forgot to add, like I didn't do a long run in these because I just feel like I would not like them if I did the long run. So I typically do a long run, or I try to do a long run in every shoe before I review it. But with this shoe, I think the farthest I ran was like 6 miles or 5 miles, which yeah, I mean, that I guess kind of just goes to show. So you have a $180 shoe that I personally really don't want to do a super long run. I think I would probably top out at like 10 or 12 miles in this shoe. And I feel like it wouldn't be the most comfortable ride. Now, where this shoe does shine is, I guess, walking. I think it's a cool looking shoe. I also think that it's a decently comfortable like walking shoe. It's a little bit more on the firm side, so you get that support while you're walking, long distances or whatnot, and then you still get a little bit of that impact protection from the Helion as well as the compression from the CloudTech technology. So if you want to spend almost $200 after tax on a walking shoe, I think that the On Cloudsurfer Maxes I might be able to recommend to you, but I think for the majority of people, especially if you're not like an On super fan, I don't recommend this shoe. I just feel like it's a little bit overpriced. Like to me, the use case doesn't really make sense. I think that there's just a lot of other shoes on the market that are better for the price point, as well as you're just gonna get a better value and more versatility probably than this shoe. So overall, that concludes my thoughts on the On Cloudsurfer Maxes. I do think that they look really nice, but when I pay for like almost $200 for a shoe, I'm not just paying for the looks, I'm also paying for some of the performance and whatnot. So it's kind of up to you whether or not you want to try this shoe or not. But for me, it's a personal no. I don't recommend it just with my experience. So that's going to pretty much wrap up my shoe review of the On Cloudsurfer Maxes. Let me know in the comment section down below. Do you like running in Ons? Are you considering this shoe? If you have the shoe, let me know what your personal experiences are with this shoe. I do have the Asics Glide Ride Max 2s in the mail. I have to go home to go get them, and I will post like a first run review as well as a full review on that. I also stay tuned for my shoes of the year. So top 5 shoes of the year, that's also gonna release. And then I'm also gonna make another video about 2026 running shoes. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next video.